Now, let's begin this one. Troy Blackstone had always been a man who thrived in shadows. As a security consultant specializing in corporate espionage and private investigation, he'd spent 15 years learning that information was the most valuable currency in the world. What he hadn't expected was that his most important case would be investigating his own wife. The brownstone in Brooklyn Heights had been their dream home when they'd bought it 8 years ago. Diana had fallen in love with the exposed brick walls and the view of Manhattan's skyline. Now, as Troy sat in his basement office, surrounded by monitors and surveillance equipment, those same walls felt like a prison he'd built for himself. Diana Blackstone, née Harrison, had once been the most captivating woman he'd ever met. A successful real estate developer with platinum blonde hair and emerald eyes that could sell ice to an Eskimo, she'd swept him off his feet at a charity gala in 2013. They'd married after a whirlwind courtship, and for the first few years, Troy had believed he'd found his perfect match. Their twins, Connor and Madison, had arrived 3 years into the marriage. At 8 years old now, they were the center of Troy's universe. Madison had inherited her mother's beauty and her father's analytical mind, while Connor possessed an artistic soul that reminded Troy of his own younger brother, who died in Afghanistan. The first crack in Troy's perfect life had appeared 6 months ago during a routine security sweep of his own home systems. Hidden financial transactions, encrypted messages, hotel reservations for two under Diana's maiden name. The discovery had hit him like a physical blow, but Troy had learned long ago to compartmentalize pain and transform it into something useful. Blake Hoffman was Diana's business partner at Harrison Hoffman Development, a company they'd built together over the past 5 years. Tall, charismatic, and blessed with the kind of easy charm that made investors open their wallets, Blake had been a frequent guest at their dinner table. Troy had even considered him a friend. The affair had been going on for 2 years. Troy's investigation had been methodical and thorough. Hidden cameras revealed intimate moments stolen in Diana's office. Financial records showed joint accounts opened in secret. Text messages detailed not just their physical relationship, but their plans for a future that didn't include Troy. But it was Diana's laptop, the one she thought was encrypted beyond his reach, that revealed the most devastating truth. They weren't just planning to leave him. They were planning to destroy him. The prenup won't matter if we can prove he's been using company resources for his surveillance business, Blake had written in one message. Your mother's connections in family court will ensure you get everything, including full custody. Diana's response had been equally chilling. Connor and Madison barely know him anyway. He's always traveling for work. We'll make sure they understand he chose his job over his family. Troy had read those messages 3 times before the full weight of their betrayal settled in. They weren't just ending their marriage. They were orchestrating his complete destruction. Diana planned to take his children, his assets, and his reputation. Blake would get the woman and the business empire they'd built together. But they had underestimated the man they were targeting. Troy spent the next 4 months preparing. He liquidated assets they didn't know about, established overseas accounts, and most importantly, he investigated Diana's family with the same thoroughness he brought to his professional cases. The Harrison family had money, influence, and secrets. Diana's mother, Patricia Harrison, was a federal judge who'd presided over family court for 20 years. Her father, Gregory Harrison, owned a chain of luxury hotels across the Northeast. They'd always treated Troy like an outsider, a blue-collar boy who'd gotten lucky with their daughter. What they didn't know was that Troy had grown up in foster care after his parents died in a car accident when he was 12. He learned early that the world was divided between predators and prey, and he'd spent his entire adult life ensuring he'd never be prey again. The breakthrough came when Troy was investigating Patricia Harrison's career. Buried in old court records, he found a case from 13 years ago that had been sealed. A case involving a drunk driving incident that had killed a family of 3. The driver had been a prominent businessman's son who'd received a suspended sentence and community service despite blood alcohol levels 3 times the legal limit. The judge who'd handed down that lenient sentence? Patricia Harrison, the businessman who'd made substantial donations to Patricia's re-election campaign immediately after the trial. Gregory Harrison's business partner. The family that had died? The Morettis, Italian immigrants who owned a small construction company that had been bidding against Harrison Development for a major city contract. Troy had his leverage. The morning Diana's lawyer served him papers at his office was the day Troy had been preparing for. Lawrence Kemper was everything Troy expected from Diana's choice of attorney. Expensive suit, cold smile, and the kind of arrogance that came from winning cases through intimidation rather than merit. She gets everything, including full custody. Kemper gloated as he slid the divorce papers across Troy's desk. Your children don't even want your name anymore. Troy looked up from the documents, his face impassive. Around them, his office hummed with the quiet efficiency of a successful security consulting firm. Awards lined the walls. Photos with grateful clients and law enforcement officials created an impression of success and respectability. Troy smiled and reached into his desk drawer, pulling out a sealed envelope. Deliver this to your client. Kemper's smugness faltered slightly as he took the envelope. What is this? Insurance, Troy replied simply. That evening, Troy's phone exploded with calls. The first was from Diana, her voice shrill with panic. What the hell is this, Troy? What are you trying to do? He let it go to voicemail. The second call was from Blake, his usual confidence replaced by barely controlled rage. You think you can blackmail us? This is extortion. Troy deleted that message without listening to it completely. The third call came at 11:47 p.m. Patricia Harrison's voice was ice-cold with fury, but underneath, Troy could hear something he'd never heard from her before. Fear. How could you know a 13-year-old's secret? She screamed. Troy answered this call. Good evening, Patricia. I was wondering when you'd call. You bastard. What do you want? Justice, Troy said simply. Something you know very little about. The envelope had contained copies of sealed court documents, financial records, and photographs. Evidence of a conspiracy to pervert justice that had resulted in 3 innocent deaths and millions in illegal profits. Evidence that could destroy not just Patricia's career, but send her to federal prison. You can't prove anything, Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. I can prove everything. Bank records showing payments from Harrison Hotels to your campaign fund. Records of the Moretti family's construction bids being mysteriously rejected after their deaths. Photos of you and Gregory celebrating the hotel contract at the country club 3 days after you let a killer walk free. The line was silent for a long moment. What do you want? Patricia asked finally. Diana withdraws the divorce papers. Blake sells his share of the business to my shell company for $1. Diana gives me full custody of the children and disappears from their lives. And you resign from the bench in disgrace. That's impossible. Diana will never agree to. Diana will agree, Troy interrupted, because the alternative is her mother in federal prison and her father's business empire crumbling under federal investigation. Because the alternative is the Moretti family finally getting justice and taking everything the Harrison family stole from them. You're destroying an innocent family. Troy's laugh was cold and bitter. Innocent? Your daughter and her lover planned to steal my children and destroy my life. Your family built their fortune on the graves of people they murdered through corruption. There's nothing innocent about any of you. Over the next week, Troy watched his carefully constructed plan unfold. Diana tried to fight it first, convinced her family's influence could protect her. Blake hired investigators to dig up dirt on Troy, but found only the carefully constructed legend of a man who'd overcome tragedy to build a legitimate business. The pressure mounted when local media began investigating the Harrison family's connections to old cases. Anonymous tips led reporters to ask uncomfortable questions about judicial ethics and campaign finance violations. Diana's resolve cracked when federal investigators showed up at her parent hotel chain, armed with search warrants and subpoenas. Blake's confidence shattered when he realized that fighting Troy meant fighting a man who'd turned investigation into an art form, who had evidence of every dirty deal, every corner cut, every law bent in the pursuit of profit. The final confrontation took place in Diana's lawyer's conference room. Kemper looked haggard, like a man who'd realized he'd been outplayed by a superior opponent. Diana sat rigid in her chair, her usual composure fractured. Blake hadn't come at all. His lawyer had advised him to distance himself from the Harrison family before their legal problems became his own. "You've won," Diana said quietly. "We'll sign whatever you want." Troy studied his wife's face, looking for any trace of the woman he'd once loved. All he saw was calculation and defeat. "I want to hear you say it." "Say what?" "That you never loved me. That our entire marriage was a lie. That you planned to steal my children and destroy my life." Diana's mask slipped, revealing something ugly underneath. "You were never good enough for me, Troy. My parents knew it from the beginning. You're nobody, a foster kid with delusions of grandeur. And yet this nobody just destroyed your entire family." The prenup. "The prenup is irrelevant now. You're signing a new agreement. One that gives me everything." The documents Troy presented were comprehensive. Diana would retain only her personal possessions and a small trust fund, enough to survive, but not enough to rebuild the life she'd planned with Blake. Blake would sell his share of Harrison Hoffman Development to Troy's shell company and disappear from their lives forever. Most importantly, Diana would sign away all parental rights and submit to supervised visitation only. "The children will know the truth someday," Diana said, signing each page with mechanical precision. "The children will know that their mother abandoned them," Troy replied. "That she chose a lover over her family. That's the only truth that matters." When the papers were signed, Troy stood and gathered his copies. "There's one more thing you should know." Diana looked up, confused. "Blake isn't disappearing because I forced him to. He's disappearing because 3 days ago, he transferred everything, his assets, his business interests, even his personal accounts, to a shell company in the Cayman Islands and bought a one-way ticket to a non-extradition country." The color drained from Diana's face. "That's impossible. Blake loves me." Troy placed a photograph on the table. It showed Blake at JFK Airport, his arms around a brunette woman Diana didn't recognize. "This is Miranda Walsh, his other girlfriend. They've been together for 6 months. Blake's been playing both of us, planning to take his share of the business and disappear with her once the divorce was final." Diana stared at the photo, her world crumbling for the second time in a week. "The difference between us," Troy continued, "is that I never trusted him. I investigated everyone in your life, including your lover. When I discovered his plan, I simply made it impossible for him to execute it with your money." "You're lying." Troy placed a second photograph on the table. Bank records showing Blake's accounts being emptied and transferred. "He left you to face the consequences alone, just like you planned to leave me." As Troy walked toward the door, Diana's composure finally broke completely. "You can't take my children. They're mine." Troy turned back, his expression carved from stone. "You gave up that right when you decided to destroy their father. Connor and Madison deserve better than a mother who would use them as weapons. They'll hate you for this someday. Maybe, but they'll never doubt that I fought for them." 3 months later, Troy sat in his home office, watching his children play in the backyard through the window. Connor was teaching Madison to throw a baseball, both of them laughing at her wild pitches. They'd adapted to their new reality with the resilience of youth, understanding only that their father was there for them and their mother was not. Patricia Harrison had resigned from the bench amid a federal investigation that ultimately resulted in a plea deal and house arrest. Gregory Harrison's hotel empire was under federal oversight, his assets frozen pending the outcome of civil suits filed by the Moretti family's surviving relatives. Diana had disappeared into obscurity, last seen working as a real estate agent in a small firm in New Jersey. Blake had indeed fled the country, but not before Troy's associates had ensured that his hidden assets were seized and returned to their rightful owners. The phone on Troy's desk rang, breaking his reverie. The caller ID showed a number he recognized, another potential client seeking his particular brand of justice. "Blackstone Security," he answered. "Mr. Blackstone? My name is Amanda Richardson. I think my husband is planning to have me killed." Troy leaned back in his chair, his pen poised over a fresh notepad. "Tell me everything, Mrs. Richardson. And please start from the beginning." Outside, his children's laughter echoed through the autumn air, a reminder of everything he'd fought to protect. In this business, there's always another case, another betrayer who needed to learn that actions had consequences. Troy Blackstone had learned that lesson in foster care, refined it in the military, and perfected it in his marriage. He'd built his life on a simple principle. Those who showed mercy to their enemies were doomed to be destroyed by them. He'd never made that mistake, and he never would.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.